Hello everyone, this is One Dragon, and today I wanted to provide some advice for getting the Cursed Crown and surviving as long as possible on Plague Island. So first of all, how do you get the Cursed Crown? Personally, I got the Cursed Crown after hitting day 60, however, this is likely not the only condition to getting the Cursed Crown. When I initially brought it up on Reddit, Gordon Van Dyke, one of the devs and co-founders, stated that there were some conditions missing, and one person stated that the other condition is also killing 20 infected villagers, which is fairly straightforward. I haven't personally tested this, but I'll provide a link to the Reddit thread in the description. Based on the 60-day condition, if you are starting a new playthrough for this, it generally takes about 4 hours of in-game time to complete. A quick disclaimer before I dive into the guide, this advice is based on my personal experience of Plague Island and may change in future as changes to the game are made or patches are introduced. Alright, so on to the guide. I'll be breaking up the guide into a few sections and be providing some footage throughout. First section will be discussing the unique mechanics of the Challenge Island and some of the impacts these will have on your playthrough. Next, I'll discuss the island layout and features. From there, I'll showcase what I believe to be the ideal layout for your kingdom and the reasoning behind it, followed by a walkthrough discussing goals for every in-game week. I've sectioned the 60 days into blood moons and included some footage of dealing with each blood moon. After, I'll quickly showcase suggested pathing and what that will look like for recruiting from 4 vagrant camps per day. The next section I'll discuss will be advanced strategies. Most of these will be relevant for after the Cursed Crown. And finally, I'll showcase some inconsistencies or bugs that I encountered in most of my recent playthroughs and some from my early playthroughs as well. The Challenge Plague Island has several unique mechanics. Any villager that takes damage are infected and converted into plague villagers. The villagers are also covered in a greed coating. Furthermore, unlike in other game modes, these villagers also lose their tools, they just disappear. Therefore, any breaches in your defense are significantly more costly than in other game modes. The plague villagers are stronger, dealing more damage, they're slower and tankier, taking a few hits to defeat, and they steal coins. Additionally, they also scale walls. When you defeat them, they turn into vagrants, meaning that you have to rehire them and pay for their tools. Like regular greed, they retreat during the day. The second point is the other greed you will encounter whilst achieving the Cursed Crown will be breeders, and armored breeders. There are no floaters in this game mode, and you'll only encounter crown stealers if you want to go further than the Cursed Crown. Uniquely in this game mode, the breeders will despawn during the day, even during blood moons. There are a few bugs and inconsistencies with breeders in Plague Island, which I'll mention at the end of the video. The third point is discussing the mount. The only mount you have access to in Plague Island is your starting mount, the Armored Warhorse. I'm not sure if the special skill is the same as the base campaign, but when activated, it grants a shield that makes the affected villagers invulnerable for a certain number of hits, and also has a limited duration. This effect can be seen by the white outline or glow around affected villagers. It definitely has a limit as to the maximum number of units that it can apply to, and range, but I'm not sure about how many units can be affected by it. As for the mount's movement speed, it's fairly average, similar to the base horse. However, its stamina is quite low, so rotating between the left and right side of your kingdom, as well as running to camps, requires careful planning and keeping track of time. Remember to refill your stamina by grazing on the grass of deforested areas, which leads us to our first challenge when you hit winter, having no access to grass to refill the horse's stamina and recharge its protection skill. Island layout. The general layout of Plague Island is a decent size and has 6 vagrant camps and 5 gold chests. There are no shrines on this island to buff your units or structures. Uniquely, this island has no portals and has a cliff portal on either side that can't be bombed or attacked be temporarily sealed. They are defended by 2 guardian tentacles, and that prevents you from hitting the portals. From my experience, I couldn't kill the guardian tentacles either, and they will attack anything that approaches. Another important distinction about this island is there are no forest clearings or openings in the middle of the forest that you typically have in other game modes. This has a number of implications for your playthrough. In forest clearings, you typically have grass to refill your mount's stamina, and can check the sun to see the time of day. Also in forest clearings, you can skip sections of the forest and send builders there to deforest and to build. This allows you to easily support vagrant camps and enclose them inside your walls to allow for easy recruitment at any time of day. However, on Plague Island, I've only found one method to enclose vagrant camps in your walls, which will be discussed later in the advanced strategy section. Note that enclosing vagrant camps is not necessary to get the Cursed Crown. Ultimately, this means that you'll be expanding your kingdom from the center outward and likely be destroying at least one of the vagrant camps on either side to ensure you have enough room for the catapults and grassland. Once again, there are 6 vagrant camps, so there's more than enough camps to recruit from. Okay, on to general tips and important concepts. So I use the following concepts to base my advice on. Number 1, gold is really important. As mentioned earlier, when infected, your units will lose their tools and become vagrants once saved. Meaning this can cost anywhere from 1 to 5 gold, or more so if the knights die, to re-recruit and repurchase their tools. Getting the Cursed Crown means surviving through a few days of winter, meaning you need to have a good gold stockpile for winter as your income is significantly reduced during winter. Also, with large amounts of gold, you can pay off most of the greed with the exception of breeders and the greed that spawns from the breeders themselves. This is especially good during blood moons. Gold also allows you to recover from mistakes like forgetting to buy fire barrels, mispositioning during nighttime, expanding at the wrong time, or just some bugs and inconsistencies that sometimes occur during this challenge island. Tip number 3. Don't make your kingdom too large. The breeders will reach your walls faster, and that will create a bottleneck much earlier with more breeders. Number 4. The only way to increase the damage you deal after having catapults and pikemen and fully upgraded towers is to get as many archers as possible, so maximizing your recruiting is important. Number 5. Due to the breeders despawning in the sunlight, stalling the greed with a few layers of walls and dealing as much damage as possible will save you even if you get 5 to 6 breeders hitting your wall. The ideal layout for your kingdom. In my opinion, the ideal layout for your kingdom will maximize gold income and allow you to recruit as many archers as possible, and having a good amount of damage at the front lines of either side of your defenses. So, just revising the sources of regular income. The first source of regular income is hunting rabbits that spawn from grassland outside your walls. Second would be farmland. Third is banker interests. Fourth is spearmen or pikemen fishing. Fifth would be berries during winter. And the sixth, which is a bit unnecessary, is with enough enclosed dark forest area, you can also regularly hunt deer. Okay, so as you can see here, I've created an image to roughly showcase what an ideal kingdom would look like in Plague Island to maximize income and be solid defensively. Obviously, the game has a lot of RNG and randomness as to the placement of all the structures, positioning of vagrant camps, and other segments of the map. So being able to adapt and play around whatever you get is important. You can see in this image that this represents the center of the kingdom, followed by the first wall, some towers, and then the other wall. These are standard for any kingdom. After that, I have a farm here. Normally there's a few other walls and towers in between, but I didn't exactly show them because they're not too important. Obviously, extra towers work well as backup in case of any breaches, but I'm not showing everything in this image. If there are any close farms as represented through this part, then you should definitely build those so you can get a good amount of income close to the town center so you can deposit them to prepare for winter. This section represents the front line, which should consist of a catapult with fire barrels, pikemen, archers, and knights. Hopefully, there'll be a nearby wall to retreat to in case of a breach. Outside the walls, hopefully you have a nearby tower. If there are any farms that are close to the front wall, it's a good idea to build a tier 1 farm so that the farmers retreat into the walls by nighttime. Make sure that it's not too far. If it's too far away from your front walls, then they won't get back in time and you'll just end up losing farmers. Following the farm, I have grassland here. So definitely have grassland for hunters to farm rabbits that spawn in the brushes. And I build any towers that are on the way to the vagrant camps or to the forest. Make sure that the grassland doesn't overextend. If it does, then the archers may not return home or return to the walls in time. Keep in mind that the greed arrive earlier and move faster as the time progresses. For the Cursed Crown, you should try to leave at least 2 vagrant camps up on either side. This is to allow for a good amount of recruits. Depending on map segment RNG, you can leave up even more vagrant camps, providing that you have a good amount of income. But this way, you should get income from a couple of farms, income from the pikemen, hunters, farming rabbits, and then obviously the interest from the bank. You can see that on the left side, I have pretty much the same setup. You've got the farm, got a wall back to retreat to, your frontline wall, a tower just right at the front. However, on this side, I have more grassland for hunters to farm because there's no farm nearby. And I have more towers just to show some RNG with that as well. You've got your 2 vagrant camps and then your portal protected by the guardian tentacle. I've also left a bigger gap here, but that'll come up later. Once again, if you don't have the best RNG for this setup, you'll need more gold to replenish your forces whenever there are any breaches. The more you push outward, the less distance there is between your front line and the cliff portal, so try not to extend too far. From the second blood moon onward, you'll notice that there'll be some breeders reaching your walls. As you're playing through, it's a good idea to try and take notice of which side takes more damage. That way you can select which side to be on in the case of blood moons. Typically what I do when there are blood moons, I try to be positioned on the weakest side and defend it using the bounce protection skill. If you're able to stem the losses or prevent losses on one side, then you can hopefully just focus on repairing the opposite side if there is a breach. Walkthrough based on blood moons. Blood moons start on the evening of day 6 and occur every 7 to 9 days from there. I'm not sure if the truce evenings are set, but I've typically only noticed a guaranteed one on night 7, and there's at least 2 or 3 more. However, I'm not sure if they're random or consistent. Based on my recent playthroughs, the blood moons occurred on the evenings of day 6, 15, 22, 31, 38, 47, and 55. I've only completed the Cursed Crown a few times recently, but each time had the exact same day for the blood moons. This might change in future if they add more RNG to it, so keep that in mind as you're playing through. Okay, days 1 to 6. On the first day, I aim to get at least 3 gold chests, but can also be fine with 1 or 2. I typically hire 2 to 3 builders and at least 8 archers. I normally build the first set of walls and also clear out a couple trees on either side of the town center. However, on this first day, if you don't get enough gold and you don't have enough archers to defend, you can just bribe the greed and that might be the easiest way to deal with it. Again, if you don't have good RNG and find enough of the gold chests, just pay off the greed instead. For the remainder of the days, I collect all the chests and scout both sides, trying to memorize the positioning of the defenses so I know where I want to eventually expand to. I buy the stone mine and upgrade the town center to get the free stone walls. Recruit from at least 3 vagrant camps each day, and possibly up to 4, and deforest up until the first vagrant camp on either side. As soon as the blood moon ends, ensure to recruit vagrants and begin expanding. At the end of day 6, once the blood moon ends, this is an excellent time to expand outward and establish at least one farm. Days 7 to 15. The evening of day 7 has always been a truce for me, so ensure to use that wisely. For example, you can recruit from all 6 camps. As mentioned earlier, day 7 is really important, so I'll discuss more about this in the advanced strategies section. In the next couple days, I aim to buy the iron mine and upgrade the town center to the iron level. I also start building towers. Remember to prioritize towers nearby your front line and any towers in front of your front line as well. Generally, I also have a lot of excess gold at this point, meaning I start depositing any excess gold into the bank and buying squires as well. Alright, so now there's some important decisions around days 12 and 13. Depending on how your income is progressing, you can decide to destroy the first camp on one side or even both sides to increase your income by either expanding the grass fields for hunters or providing more access to farmlands, or both of those things. Obviously, this will cut down the amount of vagrants you can recruit, so keep that in mind. The longer that you can hold off, the more vagrants you have. The blood moon on the evening of day 15 will have one breeder. If you have been doing well with your economy at this point, you can have the second level of stone or iron walls at your front line, and even a catapult on both ends. The catapult isn't necessary for one breeder, providing that you have enough archers and hunters, but obviously it helps. Days 16 to 22. After the second blood moon, I typically destroy the first camp on both sides to increase income and defenses. During this section of days, normally I spend the time upgrading all defenses, prioritizing any advanced towers, and occasionally upgrading any defenses closer to the town center in case of a breach. Since there are 2 vagrant camps on either side, I typically recruit villagers from 2 to 3 camps per day. Most days, if you leave early enough, you can recruit from both vagrant camps on the side you start on, and then the first vagrant camp on the opposite side. During my most recent playthrough, I had breeders hitting the wall on non-blood moon nights, from day 21 onward. Sometimes they despawn before reaching the wall, but more about that later. On the evening of day 22, or the third blood moon, I had roughly 2 breeders reach the wall, so ensure to have fire barrels to help damage the waves and the breeders. Days 23 to 31. Since the breeders are now regularly hitting the walls during normal days, I aim to have fire barrels at each front line ready as the waves crash against the walls. Normally, I aim for 3 plus, or I just buy however many so as to not waste too much dropping gold. By around day 30, I had all defenses upgraded except for the 2 towers in the town center, meaning most towers had 4 archers and all walls that would not obstruct farms were iron. Depending on how much you decide to donate to the banker or expand your kingdom, you can get this complete much sooner. On the evening of day 31, the 4th blood moon, I had armored breeders hitting the wall. In my most recent attempt, this was the only time when I had a significant breach in the walls, so I had the majority of units turned into vagrants on my right wall, and I had to repurchase them and re-employ them. Days 32 to 38. This section plays similarly as the previous one. However, from night 33 onward, I had breeders not hitting the wall on regular nights, and they often just despawned as the next day started. This delays you from reaching the vagrant camps because you can't leave as early, which means that you may need to reduce the amount of camps you visit daily from the 3 to the 2 on the one side. On the night of day 38, or the 5th blood moon, I had 3 breeders. 1 or 2 may be armored, and they all reach the walls. So make sure to have enough fire barrels to light them up. Days 39 to 47. This section played pretty identically to the previous one. There may have been more greed, so I added more fire barrels, but I also had a lot more excess gold since I was finished upgrading everything. So I gave the banker 3/4 of a full bag of coin a lot of the times, almost every day. Around day 41-ish, I had armored breeders reaching the walls. Although they might not look armored, they were tankier and dropped their armor after taking enough damage. I think this was just a visual bug, but I'll mention more about that later. At times, these broke through the first layer of my defenses, but providing that I was there to provide them with the invuln buff and rebuild, it wasn't anything major. The 6th blood moon, or the night of day 47, generally hits quite hard, with 4 to 5 breeders hitting the wall. I think there's 2 to 3 armored breeders in there, so I ended up placing a sack of coins on either side to thin out the wave before the breeders get there, and this ensured I had no breaches whatsoever. I'll now showcase this in the video, but as you can see, I run to one side with almost a full sack of coins, and I deposit them somewhere in the forest or on the way to my walls. This will effectively thin out the amount of greed that get to your walls, so that it's mostly the breeders and the greedlings that the breeders spawn. And then I moved over to the other side where I would be defending, again depositing some extra gold. I personally try to stay at the side that I think is weakest. So in my case, this was the right side. And yeah, I was able to defend this day without having any breaches. days 48 to 55. Winter starts on roughly day 49 or day 50, with the farmers retreating to the town center, grass disappearing, which means no more rabbits and no grazing for your mount, and some berry bushes spawning as well. From here, your main sources of income are the pikemen, the banker interests, and the berry bushes. Hopefully by now, you've accumulated a lot of coin in the bank, and now it's time to withdraw it and spend it. During the winter, unlike in other seasons, your archers will not have many coins, only a few from the pikemen, meaning that you may want to make a couple of trips to the banker each day to have enough coins for 3 to 4 barrels and enough money to repair any defenses, and if you want to continue recruiting, you can do that as well. Once winter hits, it becomes difficult to move around your kingdom without grass, so I tend to limit recruiting to just one camp. You can also just not recruit if you find your defenses need to be constantly repaired, or if you're confident that your defenses are adequate enough to survive the last blood moon. Okay, so the last blood moon is on the evening of day 55, and recently I found the last blood moon to be fairly inconsistent. One time, the breeders didn't even hit my walls whatsoever. However, the other time, I got hit by 5 to 6 armored breeders, and they breached all the way to my town center. Days 56 to 60. The remainder of the time is fairly easygoing. Generally, the breeders don't reach the walls if you're far back enough, and you can simply repair any damage from the previous blood moon, providing that you have enough gold. And that should be it on day 60. Pathing. Alright, now I'll showcase a clip to demonstrate good pathing. First one is recruiting from 4 camps in the early game. You'll notice that I leave as soon as the wave is finished, and depending on how far your walls are expanded, this becomes easier as the distance is shorter and safer for the villagers as well. I'll now showcase what I do during winter. Again, you may have to alter this if you don't have enough gold, but this is how I ended up pathing during winter. advanced strategy. If you decide to survive as long as you can in Plague Island, you will likely encounter the following issues. First one, crown stealers start spawning. I forget the exact day, but crown stealers will start spawning on top of the breeders and by themselves. Second point is that breeders will not despawn during the day, at least one of them, and it will continue to push during the day. This will effectively block you from recruiting as many vagrants as you can, because it obviously limits the amount of time you can spend outside your walls, and it restricts your units from farming rabbits as well, because most times, they wait behind the wall. Right, so some of the advanced strategies involve increasing the amount of vagrants that you have access to, and again, stockpiling as much gold as possible for when you eventually run out, or maybe even the second winter. Once again, these ideas are unnecessary for going for the Cursed Crown, but it's useful if you're aiming to survive as long as possible. The first strategy is that on day 7, particularly day 7, when you've got that truce night, and there's no breeders, it's a good idea to deforest from the cliff portal side towards the town center. Typically, it's from the town center to the cliff portal, but now it's in reverse. This allows you to encase vagrant camps so that you can recruit during the nighttime, and allows you to recruit from more camps than normal. Additionally, if there's any dark forest, it provides you with another source of gold, which is the respawning deer in the forest. To complete this strategy, I suggest ensuring that there are a good amount of empty map segments, like the bridge or the chest segment, between the cliff portal and the camps. However, this only works on the left side. The second strategy that I tried was hiring villagers, but not employing them. So I paid the vagrants, they moved towards my town center, and then I kept them inside the walls without employing them. The idea was that I could probably not outscale the waves in terms of damage, although if I stalled to daytime, most of the enemies would despawn. This meant that it could potentially be worth hiring villagers but keeping them unemployed, and then only hiring them if I had issues maintaining my front lines. If I had kept all of my units and employed all of them when breaches occurred, then it would cost a ridiculous amount of gold to one, hire them all back, and then two, pay for all of their tools as well. I've personally survived to around day 120-ish plus, then stopped to work on this guide. Okay, the last section is inconsistencies and bugs. So I'm not sure if these were either bugs or inconsistencies, meaning that it's just like some randomness that happened, or if it's just like unintentional and it's bug behavior. Keep in mind that this is in February 2021, so if there's future patches, it might change things. Also, most of the time, some of these could be fixed by restarting, some of them couldn't, because obviously, like, it just happened. So I'll showcase them anyways. First inconsistency, I already showcased, but occasionally the breeders would be faster, or it seemed a bit faster, and you would get a large clump of breeders crashing against your wall. One visual bug, which you may have noticed earlier, is that the armored breeders didn't show that they actually had armor on them. It did, however, show the armor shedding when you did enough damage to them, but they didn't approach the walls as having armor. The next bug or inconsistency is units getting hit through the wall, and these are typically the builders. Occasionally they walked past the wall despite nothing being queued to be built or deforesting or anything. Nothing was queued outside the wall, they just wandered out anyway. Another bug I also encountered is some greed not retreating during the day. I think they were mostly from the breeder spawns, and I think for the most part they didn't affect me because towers just shot them down. The next one is slightly annoying, but I had a siege or catapult workshop stick through the wall. Unfortunately, depending on how far it's sticking out, the greed can break the catapult as a result. Hopefully you guys found this useful. This took quite a while to put together, so let me know if this helped, or if you have any other advice to add, feel free to do it in the comments. You can watch my original playthroughs of Plague Island, as well as the Cursed Crowns of Skull Island and Dire Island as well.